Hi, Mark here. I trust you're well. Most Monday evenings I host a live support community on Zoom where over a semester we look at a theme, a narrative, for example, developing our images. And over, let's say, 16 weeks, we go step by step through the skills and tools within that narrative. Now, this recording is of a Lightroom support session back in October 2020 where we explore masking, specifically luminosity and range masking within Lightroom Classic. And I thought I'd share this recording with you to show you what our community is all about. So I hope you enjoy. If you'd like to know more or attend my free live events, just visit lightroommark.com. If you've got a question, leave it in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. So without any further ado, let's jump across to this legacy recording, as I say, 3rd of October 2020 this recorded. Bye for now. Last week we started looking at masks where we looked at the subject selection and sky selection, and we touched on brushes and gradient and radial filters. So now we're going to start looking at luminosity mask and range masks and working with the masks. So this week and next week, it's all about working with those masks. Now, Photoshop does all this, what we're going to do in Camera Raw, but there's a lot more in Photoshop for masking. And we might, later on towards Christmas, as we start bringing things together, look at some masking, so the different types of masking in Photoshop. So blending modes and things like that and so on, and using LUTs and so on in Photoshop. So it's a lot more finesse, I think is the word. So Joan, have you imported the images?
Yeah, just done that, thank you.
Okay, David, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Julia, have you got...
I was looking for the email, I couldn't find it.
Okay, so if you open up your chat and send me your send it direct to me, not to everyone, your email address that you use for your Adobe Creative Cloud account, I will send you an invite quickly. So you got an invite to the folder for all the images. Do you know how to deal with that?
Yeah.
Right, you should have an invite, Julia.
Okay. I will.
In your Creative Cloud app, top right hand corner, it should be a little bell icon. It's got a little pop up on it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just click accept, and the files will start syncing with you. Right, so let's remember how to do this, Mark, before I forget. There we go. Right, so let's share screen. And we should have these images that I've just put up today. Okay, so we all imported them as DNGs? Or have we still got them as NEF files? Do you know what the difference is? When you imported them, pressing I, it says DNG here. It's a digital negative. They were originally NEF files, Nikon RAW files. Okay, so when you imported them, if you would have clicked copy as DNG, it would have converted them to the Adobe format. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Standards moving out of the way there. So this is an image, just a street image. I was interested in this man here. I've got a whole series. This man here, sitting here, what he was doing. I was watching him, and then I was trying to make this part of the image where this couple are more interesting. He was sitting here, he had some chips here, and he was just looking across to Wales and up the Bristol Channel. But as I was just standing here, it was very boring. There wasn't anything here, so I was waiting for people to walk through. As you can see from the histogram, it's exposed to the right-hand side. So I've got all my highlights. If I press J, make sure I go into the develop module, press J. I've nearly not quite blown out my highlights, so it's captured correctly, and I haven't crushed any shadows. So I've got the full tonal range of my exposure. Okay, so what do we normally do? We set some base settings. So we're not going to worry with calibration at the moment. So I've got, he says, the color profile for my camera. You can just choose an Adobe landscape one and so on. So that's how it sees it. And I'm just going to hit auto and see what it does. And hasn't done a lot, but it's brought down my highlights. Okay, so my highlights have come down -46. It's brought the general exposure down, the mid-tones. It's opened up the shadows. It's set my black and white point, but if I hold the option key down, I can set my black and white point. So I'm holding option, and I'm just sliding the white slider till I see some blue, and same with the black. So it's meaningful black. Okay, so these bits underneath the seat, right? These are black underneath the seat where the man is sitting. Are they meaningful blacks? They're black. They're going to be black. So are they meaningful? So I'm not looking at that part of the image. Okay, so now you can see they've gone. This part of the image here is blue. It's because it's clipped out. It's blacker than black, and same in the tree. A little bit of the shadows here, but they're not meaningful blacks, and I'm making the picture a little bit more contrasty. Okay, so I've got a pleasant image. All it is a pleasant image. But now I want to done my global adjustments. I now want to do some local adjustments. So I'm going to create a virtual copy. So I go right click, create virtual copy, and we have press I for information. It says copy one. So this isn't a second file. This is a line on the catalog. Okay. So if I go back to G, there's my two. There's my original. This is in the library grid view. There's the little turnover telling me it's a virtual copy. If I go right click on the original file, show in Finder, I've only got one file. This second file does not exist. This is why we use Lightroom compared to Photoshop. I would have to have a second file to have a second copy. Okay, so there's only one file. There it is there. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so what I would have done normally is in the develop module, I would have done my spot. So I've got a spot there, and I've got a spot there, spot there. Okay, but I haven't bothered on this instance. Okay, so when I create my virtual copies, I'm doing it on a clean image each time. So the first thing I will do is I'll select the sky. Now, to me, the sky is very blue. It's very cold. Okay, so the white balance, to me, slightly off on the sky. So we'll come up to mask, and we're going to select the sky. So I've done select sky. It's going to work out the algorithm. I'm going to show my overlay, and there we go. But if we look here on the bus shelter, it's the white. It's all green. Okay, so it hasn't done a brilliant job in that case. Okay, all right. So I need to take that away. All right. So if I close the mask, and I'm just going to press the shift key and scrub in, because the color is virtually the same. You can see the white balance is off. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my mask, select the mask, and see it's green here. Show my mask. Green here. Okay, it's green here. Okay, and I'm just going to select the mask, subtract. I'm going to use a brush. Okay, minus, and I'm just going to paint on the green. Okay, there we go. Just taking that green away from that white area. Whatever is on the white. Okay. All right. Down here, all this, just take it away from. Okay. Right, now I've gone a bit too much here on the corner of the roof. So I'm going to go add brush. I'm going to make a really small brush and I'm going to make it really, really hard. That's 100%. I'm just going to paint on the corner there. Okay. So I've just refined that mask. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a go at that? And we've also got the street light. So I'll go subtract with a brush, make the brush really hard, flow 100%, right? And just paint on the, right? On the street. I'm just painting, taking the green mask away. Okay. So whatever I do to this selection, right? It's not going to do it on this street light. Okay. And I'm just holding the space bar down, which then turns my mouse, or my pen in this case, to a moving tool. Okay, I'm just painting on the street light there. Okay. I'm going to go plus brush, just overdone it there slightly, just bring it back in. Okay, minus brush from here. Okay, bit there on the side, take it off there. A nice small brush, hard flow and hard density. Okay, so it's really, really sharp. Okay. It's on that lady's face. It's on that man's face. So it hasn't done a brilliant job. It's on his rucksack. Okay. On her t-shirt, it's on her. Okay. And you remember, you can change the color of your mask. You can make your mask black. Now we can really see. Okay. So now, what is black? Okay. You can really now see. All right. And add brush. Bring it in here. Now what I'm doing is I'm painting the black on now. I'm moving around. All right. Move the mask overlay out of the way. Okay. So you can, this is where the color, and you can also affected areas and unaffected. So you can flip between the two, and you can do the opacity or the strength of the mask. So if you don't want it too black, you can just slide that. And each one is each image will be totally different. Okay. All right. So we've just done a mask for the sky. We just tidied up the mask for the sky. Scrub in there. There we go. Go back to my mask. So I've scrubbed in to make that really big. I've clicked on the mask. I'm going to add brush. I'm just going to draw in here. Make sure that's nice and tidy. So much easier than in Photoshop, adding to a mask and creating a mask. Okay. All right. So there's our mask. All right. There it is. Okay. Now, what am I going to do to it? Okay. So now I've got that selected, but I've turned the overlay off. Now I'm going to start playing. So I'm going to change the effects. So this is the effect, the amount of the effect, change the temperature. Okay. All right. Change saturation. So what I will first do is I will reset everything back to 0. There we go. And now I'm going to bring the highlights down in the sky. Okay, I'm going to change my temperature. Can make it greener, make it a bit warmer, make it bluer. But it's a different, slightly different white balance, but it's doing it to the whole of the sky. I can make the whites whiter, okay, by using the white slider, but it's just doing the sky. Okay, I've got for some reason a color, so let's turn the color off to 0. That's better. I had on mine, because the last week we were playing with color. I had a color on there, so all I've done is I've turned the saturation down to 0. Okay, because I had a red tint in the top left-hand corner for some reason. All right. Don't forget to rename your mask sky. Just by double-clicking on the name. Okay, brings up the menu. All right. So now we're playing with this particular area. Okay. So now I want to put a bit of texture and clarity in there. But that's a local adjustment to the whole sky. All right. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we might want to do something to this cloud formation and bring out some definition in the clouds. So we can do that several different ways, but my way would be using a brush. So I'm going to come in, I've clicked on the mask tool, created a new mask, click brush, and now I want a reasonably large brush with a reasonably large feather. Okay. And I'm going to show overlay, going to reset everything to 0. There we go. And saturation, turn off my colors. There we go. That's it all. And I'm going to turn off auto mask. Okay. Now I'm going to paint. So wherever I'm painting black, that's where I'm going to apply. Okay. Now I'm going to turn the overlay off. Okay. And now I'm going to put some texture, some clarity. Okay. This now is a lot more punchy. I'm going to change the white balance. Okay. Make it a bit more.
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
It's gone very dark here. Okay. So I want to subtract brush and just touch in here a bit. Okay. Perhaps bring the size.
I'm not sure about that.
Bring the size down, open up the feather, bring the flow and the density down. Flow is how much strong. So now I'm just lightly just pressing on my tablet. Okay, see the definition, it's bringing out the clouds here. But I've taken it away from this bit, and as I'm just drawing on, okay, where I'd like it to be. I show the overlay. See, now I've taken it away from here. It's only applying it to here. Okay.
Can you do that bit again, Mark? How you did that?
Do what, David?
Select the cloud only.
Okay, so I'll delete the whole mask and start again.
Thank you.
So we're going to go delete. Okay, so this is my cloud and there's no definition here. Okay, so I'll go new brush, new mask, going to create a brush. Okay, we've got size of brush. So I want a reasonably large brush with a reasonably large feather. Okay. And I got flow and density. Flow is how many times you apply. Density is how concentrated it is. I've got my black mask on so I can see what I'm going to do. And I'm just painting. Literally, I'm just using the brush and I'm painting where I want it to be. And the more I paint, the harder I paint, because I have a tablet. Okay, the more it applies to that area. Okay, so it's a graduation effect. Okay, and if I want to take away, it's like it's not in the clouds here, go subtract, brush. Now it gives me a minus brush. I'll bring the size down and just take it away from here. Just going to take it away from here. Take it away because it's got a minus brush on it. Okay, now I've created, this is the area. All I've done is selected the area that I'm going to apply whatever I'm going to apply to. So I'm now going to add some texture, take off the mask, add some texture, bring down some highlights. So bringing back the information here, change my white balance. So perhaps make it a bit cooler, not so blue. Okay. All right. Have a look, a bit of dehaze. And just now you can see all this detail that's coming back in this area here. Now, if I want, I can go create a brush again and do another bit in the middle. Okay, so I'm doing a brush on a brush. Okay, so take the overlay off and bring the exposure down a little bit. Okay, so I'm bringing back the detail and the midtones here. Make the clarity and the texture and the dehaze. So I'm bringing all this information back, but I don't want to make it too false. So it's about balancing it. Okay, this bit here on the right hand side at 3 o'clock, it's a bit blue for me. So I'm going to go back to the original brush mask. So this is brush sky 1. Okay, you can rename them whatever you want. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that and I'm going to change my white balance. Okay, and perhaps I want to do something about this area here. So let's go brush. Okay, and just going to paint in this bit here. Okay, that's all I'm doing, just painting in here. Okay, and then I'm just going to change my white balance. So I'm going to take some blue away. But I don't want to do too much because I don't want it to go green. Okay, so I could desaturate it a little bit, take some color away from it, open up the exposure, make the whites a bit whiter. Okay, so I'm taking the blue away. Okay, because the white balance was different in that area, the light temperature. Perhaps change the tint. All right, so I'm making the tint, this bit here, a bit greener. All right, rather than, see those, yeah, see? But I don't want to go too far because there's no green in the clouds. Okay, I just want to desaturate it slightly. Or I could physically change the color totally. Okay, so it's just, there's different ways of doing it. I'm just playing with the sliders. Bring the blacks down. Opening up the exposure will make it a bit whiter. Okay, lose a bit of detail. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's how you want to do it. Okay. Now we could add another mask. And we're going to use a graduated filter. Hold the shift key. Bring it down. The black. Okay. Black is going to be the strongest and it's going to come down the weakest. Turn the mask off, bring the exposure down slightly, change the white balance, make it not so blue. Okay, desaturate it a little bit. Okay, all right, bring the exposure down, make it a bit darker in the scene. But we can see it's applying it to the street light as well. So what we can do is we can do what they call an intersect mask, okay, with, I'm going to intersect with this gradient filter, okay, so there's my intersect mask, and now it's going to subtract, oops, okay, so I'm now going to subtract from that mask, okay, so from it, highlight it. Come on. Okay, so now we just bring the exposure. There we go. Okay, so it's not applying it to the there. Right, so there's lots of ways we can do things. Okay. Everyone all right with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're using brushes and we're painting them, and you can duplicate layers and you can invert them. So let's say, take this sky, what we've done to the sky, click on the dots, you can duplicate and invert. So now if I go inverted sky, see, now it's done the foreground. So now I could, if I wanted to, bring down the exposure on the foreground. Okay, so It's just spending some detail or time on different parts of the image. Okay. All right. Yeah. And these are local adjustments. All right. So I'll press done. Now, what would you do about this shadow down the bottom left-hand corner?
Dodge and burn.
Yeah. You could.
Crop it out.
Yes, you could crop it out. Yeah. You could use the healing tool. So the plaster, sticky plaster, turn off the visible spots. Okay. And take a reasonably large brush with a large feather. Okay. Let's go a bit bigger. Bigger feather. There we go. So something like that. And we just draw over it. And we just wait. There you go. Gone. Okay. Just going to press Command Z to undo, and it's come back. Okay. That was quite quick, wasn't it? Because it's a large contrast. Okay. It's very different between the black and the grass. Very different. Okay. So what about the street light? Could we do the same on the street light?
Try it.
Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a bit too much. Okay, so I've now filled my screen up. I'm going to go back to my tool, my clone tool, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to try them not too big in one hit. See what happens. Don't do a very good job, does it?
No.
Right? Because just done Command Z, it's a similar texture to the sky. Okay, so this is what I call a manipulation rather than an edit. Okay, so that to me is a Photoshop. And because we've got quite fine detail here between there and the sky, we'd want to use some tools that are in Photoshop. All right. So in this instance, what I would do is I'd open Photoshop. Well, I'd go right click, edit in Photoshop. And it will take that DNG file. He says, there it is, and now brought it into Photoshop. Now we've got a lot more tools. So we can go to subject selection, so object selection. Okay, I can just draw a square over, and let's see how good the selection is. It's using its AI, and it's actually done a pretty good job. I zoom in. Look at that. It's only on the bricks down here. Right, so what I can do there is I can subtract. So use the lasso tool and click there, and then just literally draw around and draw around there. And it looks all the texture. Okay, not quite nearly. Change the tool to the magic wand. Let's zoom in. Okay, so I've missed a tiny little bit here. So I'm going to go magic tool, white. That's going to add. There we go. There we go. And then go a bit too much. There we go. So there we go. It's now selected that whole, and now zoom out. Now it's selected. So now I can go Shift Delete, Content Aware. There's more than one way of doing it. I'll show you. Right, near enough there. Okay, not quite. Okay, so what I could do is go File. Oh, sorry, it's under Edit. Content Aware Fill. Okay, it's brought up to. See, look, now this is not, it's got a ghost effect on it, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I need to expand that selection. Okay. So there's several ways I can do that. Let's come out of here. We go Selection, and we want to modify, expand. We're going to expand by 3 pixels. It's now made it 3 pixels wider. Now go Shift, Delete, deselect. Nearly, not quite. I'd probably now use the patch tool. Make me a nice big brush, nice and soft. And just scribble over it, and you'd never know it's there. Yeah? This is why I call Photoshop a manipulation tool. All right? So you can see the difference in the tools. Okay, in selections. Okay. So let me come in here and take this out. Okay. So now we're going to use the Content Aware Fill tool here. So we need to create a selection, and I'm going to do a selection with the lasso tool. Okay. Come down. All right. And I'm just drawing loosely around my subject. Okay. There's my selection. I want to add to the selection, so I'm going to press my Shift key. Just draw on that. I'm going, there we go. So there's my selection. Okay, very loose. Edit, Content Aware Fill. It's going to bring up the Content Aware Fill. Look at that. This is the area. It's filled the chimney in, everything. Yeah, 90% there. Just go OK. Deselect. Boom. So there's a couple of little things there we just want to tidy up. So it takes the patch tool. Nice small brush. It's too big at the moment. Bring that down. And just take out here. Still too big. Go a bit further. There we go. Let's just paint over here. Okay. Paint here. That'll do. Just for now. Okay. All right. So if I come out. Never know. Now, this is the important bit. When you go to Photoshop from Lightroom, you just go File, Save. It saves the file, okay, and it puts it as a PSD file. G. Click on Lightroom, press G. Puts it next to, there's my 3 files, or 2 files and a virtual copy. So go N, okay. This is my Photoshop file. This is my original file. This is my virtual copy. Okay. So back to G, there they all are. Okay. So if I go Show in Finder, it says can't do that. So I'll have to do it that way. Show in Finder. I've got 2 files. One is the edited Photoshop file. That's the first, this one here. Okay. Oops. Okay, there's the original raw file. All right. I haven't got a virtual copy still, but it's created a second file. And that second file is 150 megabytes, 146 meg. That original file is only 26 meg. So you can see why Lightroom is very powerful. It creates lines in the catalog. If you look here, underneath the file, 146 megabytes. The original photograph was only, so it's now gone, what's that, 6 times bigger? Because we've taken it into Photoshop and done a lot of editing, or done some editing.
Gosh.
Okay, so this is why we use Lightroom. This file here, which is a virtual copy, doesn't take any disk space up, although disk space is very cheap these days. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bonus little thing there, yeah, rather than masks, okay? So let's choose a seagull one. Let's have a look at a seagull one and have a look at select subject. Okay, and let's see if we can make this. I'm on number 983. Let's see if we can make this bird. See, yeah, it's in focus, I think. Looks like it's. Yeah, it's in focus. Let's see if we can. If we look at press I for information, it's shot at 1,3,200th of a second. Okay, shot at 1.8 ISO. Sorry, 1.8 aperture at 160th ISO. So it shot really fast, really shallow depth of field, and quite a low ISO. Okay, so if we then go into our develop module, press D. What would be the first thing we did there? Anyone?
Dust spots.
Could do. It's playing on your nose or your face. What would we do first?
Just do your global adjustments, your white balance.
Yeah, but there's
your
one
blacks
particular
and-
thing that's, look at the picture, you can't miss it.
Horizon.
Brilliant. Look at that horizon line. I was concentrating on the bird and trying to get the eye in focus that I'd lost looking at the horizon line. So my horizon's totally out. Yeah. So I'd come up to the crop tool, which is R, go to the angle and draw where I think the horizon is, somewhere like that. Right? Now that's a bit to the right, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just slide the slider. Use the grids. And all I'm doing is I'm moving the pointer on the line. Okay. To try and straighten the horizon line. I could go to my transform and go level, and it will do it for me. Yeah, it's roughly what I had. Okay. Could click full. See what it does there. Exactly the same. Okay. So how would we adjust this?
Sorry, just what?
How? Okay, so the first question of the photograph is, what am I photographing?
Bird.
Yeah,
Bird.
exactly it. That's the photograph. You can see immediately what I'm photographing, the bird, can't you? The bird's about to fly away. Yeah. So that is everything else about the photograph is secondary. It's saying it's a seagull on a wall at a beach. Yeah. So the wall and the beach is secondary to the picture. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how do that, the camera that I use, the depth of field that I use, 1.8, the bird is popping off. Everything else is out of focus, yeah? But how can I make that with masks? How can I make that bird pop off even more of the image, off the background? There's a word, begins with S.
Sharpen it.
Yeah, but it's not the one I'm thinking of. Before you get divorced, you
Separate.
want to create some separation. How would we create separation?
You're going to select it.
Yeah, so we do it by depth of field, but we can also do it by light and color in the appropriate image. So how would we create the mask for this image?
Select
Like the bird and then invert it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what mask would you use?
Subject.
Yeah. Select subject. So if we go to the mask, use select subject and see what it comes up with. Okay. And it's done a pretty good job. A bit of the feet may be missing, but I'm not too worried about that. Okay. But I want to create some separation. So how would I create the separation? I've selected the bird.
You
I
would
want to
you'd invert and lighten the background.
invert and darken the background.
Okay.
Right,
got it.
very slightly, I'd darken the background. So I click on the mask, click on the dots, invert the mask. Okay, so it's now you can see what it's missed in the feet.
Mm.
Yeah. So let's undo. Control Z, Shift. I need to come out of the mask. So, okay, so I'm going to zoom in on the feet. Now I'm going to go back to the mask, click on the mask. Now you can see what it's missed off the feet. Okay, so now I'm going to go add, brush. I want a small brush. I want the feather to be virtually 0. Okay, and I want to draw too big a brush. It's gone over the, but if I turn on auto mask, add, brush, auto mask, nice small brush. Okay, just paint on. The auto mask is only sticking to the texture and the tonality that I draw on within, oops, the actual circle. Okay. It's not going outside that circle. Okay. Right. I'm going to do a bit of subtraction as well, brush. And I'm just going to subtract on that corner there and on there. Okay, I'm going to go back to add, I think. Go back to brush and just do a little bit there. Auto mask is on, so it's not going to go onto the background. As long as I don't take the plus over onto the grass, it's going to select everything that's in the circle that is of that tonality. Okay, texture and tonality. Oh, I've gone over it now. So now we've got to do Command Z to undo. Okay, there we go. That's a bit better. I'll do. Okay, so I've now created that mask. All right, for the bird. All right, so go back to the mask. I want to click on the dots, duplicate and invert it. So now I've got the background, okay, which is black. Okay, so turn off the overlay. And now I want to bring down my exposure very, very gently. You're probably going to do 1/3 of a stop, 2/3 of a stop, and you're going to dance between the two masks. So I'm going to rename this mask as background. Okay. And then go to the first mask and rename that's bird. Okay. And now clicking on the bird, I'm going to brighten the bird up. Open up the shadows. Okay. Now I'm going to add some texture, a little bit of saturation, a bit of sharpening. Okay. That bird is much more now popping off the background. I'm now going to go to the background. I'm going to bring down the highlights. I'm going to soften using the texture of the background. Okay. All right. So I can close. All right. Look at the difference. They're subtle, but look how soft bird is on the one on the left where we started with, and look at the one on the right. Much more vibrant and popping off the background. I've created separation. Okay. And the key is to do it subtly. Okay. So now I've got this. Let's turn my profiles on. Just there. There we go. Now let's go back to my masks. Bring down the exposure a little bit on the background. Go back to the bird. Let's bring up the exposure, a bit of clarity. Okay. Now I want to focus my eye more on the bird. So, but I want to do it in gradual. So I'm now going to go to a radial mask. I'm going to draw a circle on the bird. Okay, let's take the overlay off. Okay, So the pin, the white, the black dot and the pin. Okay. So I've put that in, but now I'm going to invert the mask. You can go up to the menu, or there's a little tick box here, invert it. So I'm now going to apply outside. So let's bring, so it's like a vignette, but I'm concentrating on the birds and I'm doing it very gently. Okay. So the bird now is more popping off. I could duplicate the mask, duplicate. Okay. Oh, oops, no, I don't. I want to duplicate and invert. So duplicate and invert. So now I'm going to do inside. Okay. And I want to change my feather. So I'm reducing, so it's graduating out. Okay, turn the overlay off. There we go. Now I'm going to increase the saturation, increase the sharpening. Okay. Boom. Before and after. Okay. I've darkened the background. My eye is drawn more to the bird. The bird, look at the whites on the bird compared to the one on the left. They're very grey, they're very dark, they're very white on the bird. Okay. And this is the local adjustments, and you adjust and you adjust and you adjust. So you might want to use a brush. Okay, brush. And we're going to apply some sharpening. Okay, and I'm just going to paint on the bird, the foreground of the bird. I'm just painting some sharpening on. Okay, and I'm not using an overlay. I'm just painting on the bird itself. Okay, I turn the mask on. Okay, should go black in a second. There it is. Okay, so I can now, auto mask is switched on. So I'm now looking at my mask. Okay, so this is the area. Whatever I do to it, it's going to do it. Okay. All right. Now turn the mask off. Increase the sharpening. Okay. All right. All right. That's 300% nearly. Pin sharp. You can see all the grain in the. Bring it down. Okay. 100%. Pin sharp. Okay. And I've created separation between the subject and the background using local masks and using dark and lights and texture and clarity to create that bird popping off. Now I might, and there's no right or wrong answer. People will have different opinions. I might want to, if I come down to here, create a gradient filter, and I want to take my eye on the wall, off the wall. The walls to, let's take the sharpness down. Let's take texture, clarity. So I'm making the wall a bit sharp, a bit softer in light, softer in texture. Okay, so again, the eye. I can never remember what the keyboard shortcut is for. Let's have a look. So go help. I think it's Control / I think. Yeah, Command / Okay, it brings up the keyboard shortcuts. And where's before and after? Anyone know what the before and after keyboard shortcut is? Tool shortcut mode. Can't see it.
Why?
Is it Y?
Might be.
Yeah, Y. Well done. Didn't know that. I don't know the shortcode keyboard. So you can see now, look at the wall. The wall is darker than the one on the left. The bird is a lot brighter. The eye is drawn to the bird, not to the background so much. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Right, so there we go. Okay, so I've used masks and I've applied local adjustments to the areas. Okay, and there is no right or wrong answer. There's no particular order. It's just getting you to think about, the image. The bird on the left, as it was shot, is because it's shot in RAW. I've got all this information. It's quite dark and, but my eye now, because your eye goes to the brightest part of the image, my eye is drawn to the bird. Okay.
Good.
All right. Okay.
Yep.
So do you want to have a go for 5 minutes? It's nearly 8 o'clock. And so there's some other images that I've put in there that you can have a play with. Different subjects, and we'll look at colours next week. So this train we're going to look at next week about colours, changing the colours. But you've got the bird taking off, and different things and so on that you can play and show us next week, and I'll have a little go. Yeah.
When you put your mask on, Mark,
Yeah.
how do you zoom in? Because I seem to lose my
Zoom in
toolbar.
first and then put the mask on. So turn the brush tool off or whatever tool you're on. So press close.
Mm-hmm.
And then fill the screen up with what you want to do. So shift and draw a box or zoom in or scrub in. Okay, so you've got the right area on the screen that you want. And then turn the mask on. That's the way I do it, unless somebody else knows a different way of doing it. So how we going?
It's very clever.
Well, you can do the same things in Photoshop the same way, or there's lots of other options that we can do, and over time we'll look at different ways and so on. But it's just introducing you to separation and local adjustments and so on. And next week we'll finish it off with color masks and luminosity masks. Okay. So anyone got any questions about that?
Not at the moment, no.
No? Okay. So you can see it's like a layer of a cake. You're applying things to areas. You're doing things, you're dodging and burning, as David said, light. So you're making areas darker, areas lighter. And there's a very good book. I can't think of his name now. I no longer got the book. So in the old days with film, this is what we used to do. You used to create a contact print. So this is some form of boat. And if you can imagine, each of these are like areas. So we've got top left, top right. We've got this arch over the middle. We've got the boat in the middle. And we've got this part of the bank that's down the corner. And these are all, we're either adding or subtracting light to the area. So we'd make a contact print and we would draw on the print and we would dodge or burn. So dodge is making an area darker. Burning is making an area lighter. So plus would be lighter. Okay, so we'd create this mask. Okay, so these are masks. This is the old way of doing it. These are masks. Now we draw on it with our Wacom tablet or our mouse, and we create this mask, and we can change the colors, etc. and so on. But this is how it used to be done in the old days in the darkroom. Okay, another one there. Show new image tab. Okay, so this is a bridge and so on. So he's got a graduated filter in the corner, another graduated filter there. He's got a part on the building here. He's brought it down. Whether that's 4 stops, I don't know. So he's got a map of what he's doing in light to the image. See if there's anything else. Okay, and this is what you used to do. It's not going to be a very good big picture, I don't think. No, it's not a very big picture, but you used to put these shapes and you used to stop the light hitting particular areas. So, and that was dodging and burning in the dark room. Okay, we all right with that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to just sidestep to one other topic that we haven't touched yet, just to show you something to add to what we've been doing. So we're doing masks, okay? So we are defining a geographical area on the image, okay? But you can also do a very similar thing to what we call the tone curve. And I'm just going to show you a general tone curve, okay? And a tone curve is basically a line that's got all the points of light for this conversation. Okay, it's a lot more in depth, and we can adjust globally that tone of light. Okay, all right. So let me just show you this. Okay, because all these tools are going to add to your portfolio of tools that you're going to use. Okay, so this is the tone curve. This is my histogram of exposure in the middle. Can you see this, like mountain peaks? This is my histogram, the grey bit up here in the tone curve. Okay, and this is a global adjustment. So this is black in the bottom left corner. This is white. And I can adjust, bring down the white, so making it darker. Okay, I can make my values of white. Okay, so this is 0. This is 100. This is a bar graph. Okay, 0, 100. This is 0. This is 255. You can see it's got 255. That's absolute white. But I could say bring down my absolute white value is now 233. I can make it 220. We'll make the white brighter. Okay. All right. This is a tone curve. Okay. And now I can create any value of light. Okay. Black or white, grey in the middle. I can change the value. Okay. Now there's a little pipette tool just here on the top left-hand corner. I click on the pipette tool and go to a part of the image. So let's say this wall, click on the wall, and you can see it's put a point in that tone curve. If you have a look here on the tone curve, the line, it's now put a point in there where I've touched. That is the value of light. Okay, so I've touched, and I can go up and I can go down. I'm just doing it for artistic effect. Right? You don't do it this much. And I can adjust the brightness up and down. Just going to undo them, of that area. Okay, but it's a global tonal adjustment. So I want to bring my blacks down slightly, and all I'm doing is I'm clicking on the line and I'm creating but I can slide up on the line and down the line. Can you see that I'm just dancing around and I'm playing with the tonal value? Now look at that. Look how much that has changed. This line is now slightly curved. The background's gone all dark. And look how white that bird is. It's popping off totally off the background. Okay?
Yeah.
Right. Look at the difference there.
Mm.
All I've done is I've adjusted the tone. I've made the white value what is white, rather than a value of 255. That's the value of white. I've brought it down. So the whites become more whiter at a lower brightness. That's what I've done. Okay, this is this point up here. Okay, I've made the whites rather than the numerical value of white at 255. I've said, no, that's too bright. I want to make the point lighter when it's white. Yeah, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then all I've done is I've come into the tone curve and I've danced around to bring down the dark. This is darks. Down the bottom it's darks. Up the top is whites. And in the middle is the mid-tone. We're talking about exposure. Black to white, greys in the middle. And I've just danced around globally at my values of light. Okay. Now look how subtly the background is dark and the bird is white. Now I could go to the top side of it, and this is the highlights. Look how much I'm adjusting this. I'm adjusting 201, 203, 204, and look at the difference it's making to the image. Okay. I'm just subtly making the whites whiter. Okay. I've gone from 201 to 204. I've just increased the brightness. Right, and I'm now going to decrease the darkness slightly. Too much. There we go. So I've created this slight bend in the image. Now I might want to take my midtones up slightly. There we go. Boom. Look at the difference in the image. Bird on the left is all grey and mucky. Bird on the right, pin sharp white. My eyes drawn to, and I've done that with a mixture of masks and playing my tone curve, just to tell it what color, what light value I want at particular parts of the image. Okay, and this would take a little while in Photoshop, but it's all intuitive because it's as a photographer. Okay, so there's not one way of doing this. I'm just giving you the tools that you can play, select areas, do global adjustments. Now we look at light, and we'll bring all, over the weeks, we'll bring all this together, and we'll do a bit of this and a bit of that, because every image is different. Okay. In an ideal world, you get up in the morning, you do 10 minutes of this every morning before you, as you're having a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Marilyn came to me today and she had 2 hours sitting here. She said, I haven't done anything since I saw you 2 weeks ago, and I had 2 hours then. I said, so you've forgotten everything? I said, all you've got to do is just power up the computer, and as you're having your first cup of coffee in the morning, just do 10 minutes. 10 minutes playing. You're not going to break it. Or if you do break it, which you won't, you know I'm here to help you out. And you just eat every day. You know, I'm here between 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay. All right. So, and I do an hour every day. So 8 o'clock comes, 8:30. I've done my editing. I put it away. Well, it's culling, editing, and I do that 5, 6, 7 days a week. Okay. I know it's my job. I'm not expecting people to do that. Just 10 minutes. Or what you could do is put your images into a collection, sit in bed with your iPad and your Apple Pencil, because in a collection, sync it to the cloud, and do them with your cup of coffee, because your loved ones bought you a cup of coffee, and you can sit there and just do them on the iPad, and it syncs back to classic. Okay. So when I import images in my main catalog, if I don't want to be sitting here, or I know tomorrow morning I'm not going to be sitting here because I've got to wait for a delivery at 10 o'clock or the engineer's coming, I'll sync my workflow into the cloud, and I'll sit there with my laptop and my iPad and do it. Thursday, I'm teaching at Plymouth. I'll sync 5 or 6 collections to the cloud. I'll download them to the iPad, so I've got the raw files or the smart previews on my iPad, so I don't need internet connection on the train. I do have it, but I don't need it. And I can edit the images or cull the images or do what I want on my iPad and my Apple Pencil. And then when I get internet connection or I sync with my phone or whatever, it puts all my adjustments back into the cloud. And when I turn this on, it syncs here. Right? It's a whole ecosystem. Everything works together. And it's working out a workflow of, oh, how do I do this? How I'm paying for this. How can I use it? In my work catalog, I have over 100,000 images wherever I am in the world. So if somebody phones me up and says, Mark, I need this image, boom, I've got it there. But it doesn't cost me anything in storage because they're all smart previews from Classic. It's just working out what's the best system or the best tools for you to use. And this is what all this is about. It's about using the tools that you understand how they work and how to use them on each end, So you're making a cup of tea. You're not going to get a dessert spoon to put, or some people will put sugar in with a dessert spoon. You use a teaspoon, yeah? Or half a tablespoon or whatever. Yeah? So we'll go through all these tools and so on, but in the order of a like a workflow and so on. So, and add something every week to it. Right. So I've started to introduce you to the tone curve. Don't have to use masks. You can do things different ways. And there'll be ways that oh, that doesn't work. Now do it this way. Oh, that works better. I get better results with that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone got any questions?
Yes.
Go on then.
So when you said about going right back to the beginning,
Your internet connection is going. Go on.
about importing today's images as DNG.
Yeah.
That's what I thought I did. But when I clicked Show in Finder, I've got two images. I've got the DNG and I've got an NEF. So did I do something wrong when I imported them then?
So when it converted it, when it converts, it says delete original, and that tick box wasn't ticked.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so I'll show you that quickly. Yeah, screen. G. Okay, so if these are already converted, but you go library, convert to DNG, and you've got here, delete originals after successful conversion.
Okay.
All right. So this is if you're doing them manually. When you import them, it'll import it. So, but because you probably you've only copied them, you moved them, you've copied them, and they're still in the same location, which is your cloud. Let's have a look. Yeah. So what's happened is you've copied it and just not deleted it on conversion. That's not a problem. And the NEF is the Nikon RAW format. With a Canon, which is what you are, it's CR2.
Okay.
And so on. So, but some cameras like Leica and I think Panasonic, David, they shoot in DNG.
Yeah.
Yeah. They already shoot in the Adobe format because it's a free open source format. Okay. It's just, and all it is if you can imagine, all the instructions, all the code, all the computer garbage, it's all in the same order. Okay. But Nikon's got it in their order, and Nikon have got two RAW formats. So it's a CRW or a NEF. No, sorry, not CRW. An NRW, which is the Nikon 1 format. And then NEF, which is like the bigger brother. And then a CR2. And is there another Canon format? I think there's another one. CRW? Don't know. Anyway. But the way they make the file, the actual machine code and everything, and then the way it's all written and so on, is in a different order. So, for example, the first line of code might say, that's the size on Canon. Well, on Nikon, it might be, that's the color space or the file name or the date and time. And what Adobe have said is, it takes us all this time to manipulate all this stuff. Let's have a standard. So they've put out this DNG standard, which is free, open source. So to make my Lightroom run faster, I've put everything in a DNG because Adobe have said they will support that whilst they're in business. They don't know if they will support an old legacy format. So there was it called JPEG 2000, which is 20 odd years old now. Some computer software does not support that anymore. It's a legacy archive format. Okay, some do, some don't. So it gets to a point where, you know, you just can't, you know, it's like, I think it was version 10 of Lightroom. You had to have a particular Mac to update it. I think Sue Pegg's upstairs, her Mac, it's an old one that her husband's replaced, like 8 years old. It doesn't run the new version of Lightroom. So she uses the big screen, but she does everything on a web browser. Lightroom.adobe.com, that is the cloud for her. And she does her editing on a web browser, and it syncs back because she wants to use a big screen. Rather than using her little laptop, she wants to use the big screen. Okay, so there's always workarounds, compromises, as I say in photography. So has anyone got any support questions before we call it a night? Anyone want something? No? Shane, are we done? Any questions about tonight? No?
No, it's very good.
Okay. Lovely to see you. I'll try and do the recording tomorrow.
Thank you.
And see you next week.
See you next week.
Take care. Good night, all the
Bye.
best.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.